Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless. Streaming back in studio live at KVI.com and KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, independent journalists put Seattle in the national spotlight for good reasons, finally. We'll tell you why later, but first, let's do our daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
I consider our audience here at KVI Nation like my family. We share the good times together. We share the bad times together. And you guys have listened to me talk about what's going on in the Middle East for 2 straight years now. And for those of you who may be new additions to the show, I want to tell you why. When October 7th happened, I think I was depressed for, a month and a half, maybe longer, maybe 6 months. Because everybody who is Jewish, anybody who lives in Israel who isn't Jewish, was 1 degree separated from what happened. Everybody knew somebody who died, or somebody who was injured, or somebody who survived, or knew somebody whose relative had died, or who was injured, or who was serving in the IDF. It was very, very, very personal. But last month, it got a lot more personal for me. I had friends who went to the IDF going back to October 8th. There's one moment, I don't think I shared this one on air, Mike. There's a prayer that we do in synagogue, which is for the Israeli soldiers. We have one that we do for the American soldiers too, but there's one we do for the Israeli soldiers. And after October 7th, when all these reservists were being called up, I worked in Jewish youth outreach for years. I worked with a lot of Jewish teens. And a lot of them, I encouraged them to join the IDF. And we were doing this thing where they were reading the names of all the kids going out to war that we should pray for them. And I had a complete breakdown in synagogue. Tears were just pouring down my face. Where I go, I sent those kids to war. I sent those kids to war. I sent those kids to war. My friends, they gave me a couple scotches, and I was okay a little while later, but I was never really okay because I was just checking to make sure they were all coming back. Last month, it's been last month already, my oldest son, he moved to Israel, and he joined the Israeli Defense Forces when he finished college. So for a father like me, I'm very, very proud, of course, but at the same time, you're terrified. And the difference between when an American soldier goes to war versus when an Israeli soldier goes to war is that America, 330 million Americans, 350 million Americans, you don't necessarily know the people on the battle lines. You may know people whose kids have served. You may know people who have served. But in Israel, you know somebody who's serving right now. And for me, it got very, very personal because my son's going, so I'm proud, but I'm also petrified. Are they going to send him into the tunnels of Gaza? And then I get another bombshell dropped on me. My second son, who's currently studying in Israel for a gap year program, called up my oldest son, and he said, how do I convince Dad to let me join the IDF? I don't need any convincing. I said yes to the first one. I'm, of course, going to say yes to the second one. But my oldest son says, are you kidding? Dad would love to go with you. He's just too fat and out of shape, so they don't really want him. He then calls my wife, and he says, how do I convince Dad to let me go to the IDF? And my wife says, are you kidding? Dad would love to go with you, but he can't. He calls me and he gives me this pitch. You know when a kid has the pitch ready to go for you, if you don't have kids, you've done this with your parents, where you came with this whole pitch, this whole idea. He said, Dad, there are so many men serving in the reserves who have families, who have kids. I should do my part so at least one of those guys doesn't have to go. How can I say no to that? How can I say no to that? And for those of you out there who are a little bit more cynical and say, why isn't he joining the U.S. Armed Forces? Of course you should serve in the U.S. Armed Forces, but there's very few Jews. So you really need him to serve in that army. There's a lot less of us. And they chose to do this. This was their decision. So for me, I'm hoping for a peace deal every single day. And I know I'm the fire and brimstone. Bomb Iran, bomb Gaza, carpet bomb it. I know that's me. But at the same time, it got really, really personal and really, really real last month in a way that it wasn't before. This peace deal is a remarkable achievement. A remarkable achievement. It's been 2 years since the tragedy of October 7th, where 1,200 people were killed, massacred, tortured, raped, then killed. Thousands more were injured, and that never gets talked about enough. And 251 people were kidnapped, including Americans. 46 Americans were killed on October 7th. Whenever people say to me, Ari, why does this affect America? If 46 Americans are killed somewhere, you don't think you should mete out revenge? You don't think you should mete out justice? Of course you should. When Americans are being held hostage, you should say, give them back or else. And Joe Biden was never able to do that. Donald Trump was able to do that in less than a year into his term. He got the best people, and he did it through strength. Let's discuss how we got to this point, because it is truly remarkable how we got to this point, and Joe Biden gets a little bit of credit along the way, but not as much as he thinks he should get or any Democrat thinks he should get. October 7th happens. Immediately, Hezbollah in northern Israel starts launching rockets at Israel. Gaza, which is against the Mediterranean Sea, is already launching rockets at Israel. The Houthi rebels in Yemen decide now's a good chance to take opportunity of the situation. And you've got Iran funding this entire mess. You've got weapons flowing across the border from Egypt. You've got them coming in from other places. Israel is facing a 7-front war. It's got Syria to worry about. It's facing a war for its very survival. So what happens? Israel says, okay, we got to have this massive, massive response. It took them 2 to 3 weeks to actually go into Gaza. They started the airstrikes almost right away. But for the people who say, why didn't you give diplomacy a chance? They waited 2 to 3 weeks because they had to get all the military assets in place. And they had to call up all the reservists. 400,000 reservists got called up for that. That takes time. That takes coordination. People like me were saying, when are you doing it? When are you doing it? When are you doing it? During that time, anytime during those 2 to 3 weeks, Hamas could have said, here's your hostages. Don't blow us up. We're sorry. We surrender. Didn't do it. What's fascinating to me was that before the October 7th attacks, the social media accounts went live on various college campuses that had been dead for years. They knew about this thing before it happened. And the day of the attacks, while the bodies are still bleeding out in Israel, you have people saying it's a genocide. It's a genocide. Israel hadn't even gone in yet. But it's a genocide. This was a coordinated effort, not just on the military front, but also on the social media front, a war of information. So what happens? Israel, of course, responds in Gaza. But it's also got to respond everywhere else. And we know with Hezbollah, they had to go do things in the north of Israel because that's up in Lebanon. Operation Grim Beeper, one of the most brilliant strategic moves in not just espionage, but modern-day warfare, perhaps in all of history, taking out all of Hezbollah in basically a week, then bombing their head when they came to a base to discuss what was left of them, absolutely decapitated the head of the snake. Syria is being funded by these guys and being funded by Iran. As soon as Assad wasn't being propped up by these guys anymore because now Iran is facing sanctions and because now their proxies are being taken out, Syria collapses. Gaza. Israel decimates Gaza, even though they're working under the worst conditions possible because Hamas is using their own civilians as human shields. The Houthi rebels are attacking shipping in the Red Sea, and that was a tactical mistake because you're also bringing the U.S. to fight. They thought Joe Biden wouldn't fight, and Joe Biden didn't fight that well. But then Pete Hegseth comes along and says, all right, we're going to take this out, and we're going to stop this nonsense, and that's exactly what they did. And then the cherry on top is the U.S. helping Israel bomb Iran because Iran wants to kill not just all Jews, but all Americans and destroy America. That's how we get to this point. That's how we get to where we are now. And President Trump's team has been working on this. What are the two things that Israel has said are the conditions to ending the war? What are the two things? Hamas surrenders and you return the hostages. One of those things seems like it's going to happen on Monday or at the latest Tuesday, where the hostages are coming home. The 28 living hostages and about the 20 other bodies. Now, first, the 28 living hostages are going to be released supposedly on Monday or Tuesday, please God. And when those hostages come home, we're going to be seeing videos of what they look like because the last ones have looked like they walked out of concentration camps. And we're going to be seeing that again. And you're going to tell me again, oh, they're so well treated. Give me a break. That is such a lie. And then what's going to happen is Israel has to release hundreds of terrorists. Now, Unfortunately, this is just the formula that's been put in place, but you're talking about 250 long-term prisoners, which means people serving life sentences, plus 1,700 other terrorists arrested during the war. When they say women and children, they're not like prisoners like we decide to lock up some Palestinians. No, these are people who tried to carry out terrorist attacks, and calling a 17-year-old a child doesn't really fit the bill. Something fascinating to me, because this is phase one. Phase two is Hamas has to surrender. Hamas has to disarm. And they've agreed to do so, but Hamas has a bad way of not keeping their deals. So the question is, are they actually going to do that? That's the real question. Hamas has reneged on these deals in the past, and I can already see what's happening. The hostages come home. Now, something they haven't mentioned is that Hamas is claiming they don't know where all the bodies are. They've stashed them all over Gaza. And they're claiming they need more time to find the dead bodies. I want you to think about that. Not only were they holding them hostage, they lost them. Remember the Bebas family when they made that whole production of returning the woman and her 2 toddlers? And they returned the wrong bodies. They returned some Palestinians. That's how much they care about life over there. So we're going to have to go through that again. You're going to have to verify who all of them are, but please, God, they'll come home. Those of you who watch on the live stream, you know I'm always wearing a pin or I'm wearing my necklace every day, calling for the hostages to come home. I have for 2 years. I think it would be great if everybody who's wearing these things sends them to Yad Vashem in Israel. Yad Vashem is the big Holocaust memorial in Israel. And if they just pile them all on top of each other and go, even the one Van Jones is wearing, anyone, and the one that they're wearing on CNN, all of them, just send them all in and say, this is the amount of people that were praying for this to happen. Praying for this day to come. I think that would be a huge impact. I would happily send all my stuff off to a place like that for a memorial like that. But now you've got to think, is Hamas actually going to disarm? And I'm already seeing it. I'm on CARE's mailing list for some reason. CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations, was a branch of Hamas here in the U.S. And they were already condemning Israel for continuing to attack Hamas. Well, first of all, the ceasefire isn't in place yet. Second of all, Israel has said, once you give us back the hostages, you'd better disarm. That's part of Trump's peace plan. If they don't, I can already see what's going to happen. The world is going to say, whoa, we gave you back the hostages. We gave you back the hostages. What more do you want? 2 goals here. Hostages. Hamas can't threaten Israel ever again. They need to disarm and cease to exist. Now, something else that pushed this was Qatar. When Israel had the attack on Qatar to take out the heads of Hamas, Qatar said, we don't want this in our backyard anymore. No, we didn't want to get dragged into this. We're more than happy to mess with it from afar. But that's when Qatar was willing to come to the table. And that was a defining moment in all of this. And I have to say, President Trump, peace through strength, saying, you do this or else. Utilizing the relationships he have. Remember how much flack he got for his visits to Qatar and Saudi Arabia? Oh, he's giving in to them. No, he's making deals to make this moment possible. There's been other hostage returns before. You know what made those possible? The Abraham Accords. President Trump and his negotiating team deserves the Nobel Prize for ending this war and so many others. It's ridiculous he didn't get it for the Abraham Accords the first time around. But here's something that's even more ridiculous. Have any Democrats praised Donald Trump for this at all? Where's the ceasefire now brigade? They should be saying to Hamas, do everything it takes to stop this. If the Jews had an opportunity for somebody to say to Nazi Germany, stop the genocide now, the Jews would have said under any conditions, yes. If an actual genocide is happening in Gaza, wouldn't the Palestinians be out there not chanting in the streets for death for Jews when they heard the news the ceasefire was going to happen? But please, yes, end the suffering? Different priorities, different mentalities. Where's the ceasefire now brigade? Where's AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Pramila Jayapal? Where's all the kids on college campuses? Literally 2 days ago, you had kids walking off of college campuses and Seattle high schools, walking out in support of a terrorist organization, not pro-Palestinian, but in support of the resistance, a.k.a. Hamas, the resistance, and saying they want more October 7th. But you know the good news? From the video I saw, what did it look like? 200, 300 people from all those high schools and from all those colleges? What is that, like 5 or 6 per school? That's how many are actually a problem versus how many got caught in it because it was socially trendy or without the outside agitators, or maybe that's how many outside agitators came to UW campus. I can't tell if those are actually high schoolers I saw in Cal Anderson Park burning an American flag. I can't tell. I think there's a lot less of these activists than people believe. I think it's just what's today's cause. And now with Antifa under investigation, with their financial sources under investigation, and with the Hamasniks' financial sources under investigation, I think they've gone quiet. I think you see the true radicals right now, not the paid radicals who are out there. I think that's what you're seeing and what you saw on the second anniversary of October 7th just a couple of days ago. President Trump should be getting the Nobel Prize. President Trump should be getting praise from everybody who said bring the hostages home. President Trump should be getting praise from everybody who said stop the genocide, even though there's not one happening. There's only one Democrat I actually heard praise Donald Trump. Everybody else has been silent on social media. There's only one. That's my favorite Democrat senator, John Fetterman.
I think the whole point of having a Nobel Peace Prize is for ending wars and promoting peace. And I'm going to make a direct appeal to the president. I hope he chooses to provide the tomahawks to the Ukrainians too, and give them the tools that they need to push back against Russia. And if he brings the Ukrainian war to its end, I'll be the Democrat leading the committee for his Nobel Prize Peace for ending both of these terrible wars.
Boom. I haven't heard any other Democrats say anything at all. Not one. Joe Biden, if he wants to be a class act, you know what he could tweet out right now? I'm so glad we were able to take it this far and Trump picked up the ball. You could say something like that. Kamala Harris could say the same thing. You're taking credit and at the same time nope. Silence. Absolute silence. You got all the countries in the Middle East on the same page. You got the countries in Europe on the same page. That in and of itself is an amazing historic achievement. The picture of Marco Rubio walking in yesterday while President Trump was meeting with our friends in the media about Antifa and whispering, it reminded me of the George Bush picture from 9/11. When you had his advisor come in to George Bush and tell him the World Trade Center had been hit by an airplane. That was bad news. This flipped the script. Marco Rubio comes in, hands him a letter that says, hey, we might be about to have peace. What an iconic moment.
Criminal conspiracy.
Okay. I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly, so I will take a couple of more questions.
President Trump is already scheduled to go to Israel and go to Egypt. He's probably going to address the Knesset, which is Israel's Congress. I can't think of anything like this happening in modern history, if ever before. This is huge. He's probably going to Egypt to sign the agreement, to sign the U.S.'s role in overseeing Gaza and helping out with overseeing and keeping all these countries in line. This is a huge, huge, huge achievement. And Mike knows, for me, it's always good Trump, bad Trump. What did Trump do that I like? What did Trump do that I don't like? And I'll tell you something today. There's nothing I don't like about President Trump. I don't know anybody else who could have done what he did. Mr. President, from the bottom of my heart, from the fact that I'm a father who has a kid serving over there, and another kid who might be serving over there, that I got family members over there, that I got friends who lost family members over there. Mr. President, thank you so much. You are a true friend of the Jews. You are a true friend of Israel. You are a true person who makes world peace. I can't thank you enough. I just can't. Mr. President, thank you. Thank you so much. And we are forever in your debt. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, Seattle Public Schools has a violent incident and then says they're not bringing cops back to campus. Oh, liberal logic is insane. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. I mentioned earlier that 2 days ago, students in Seattle public high schools walked out in support of Hamas. You know they got credit for it? According to UW Jewish alumni on social media, they said that Franklin High School's student organizations, the Student Leadership Club, offered civic engagement credit for walking out on October 7th. Now, most schools didn't do anything about this at all. Most schools said if you walk out, you're going to get an unexcused absence and you're done. No excused absences. That's the most they did, right? And if you're off campus, we can't take safety responsibility for you. But what happens here is Franklin High School says, we'll give you credit for walking out in support of a terrorist organization, not in support of Palestine. Remember that these flyers were in support of the resistance on October 7th, calling for more October 7th style attacks. So if you walk out in support of Hamas, you can now get credit at Seattle Public Schools. Amazing. They haven't gotten back to my request for comment yet. Meanwhile, Seattle Public Schools don't care about the safety of your children at all. Garfield High School, there was a proposal to have a one-year pilot program. A one-year pilot program, just 1 year, to try bringing cops back to campus. Because there's been multiple shootings at Garfield High School, including one kid getting killed. So if there's any place to try this, it would be Garfield High School. And they just said no. Let's remember they banned police from these campuses following the George Floyd riots in 2020. And they haven't brought them back since. And they've had tons of safety problems. They've had multiple shootings at multiple campuses. They've had homeless encampments on the campuses with their own violence that it brings to them. But they won't bring the cops back. So Garfield makes this decision. And then what happens the same day? According to Como News, Seattle police said a man was arrested after he forced his way into a high school, attacked a security guard, and pointed a gun at a teenager. So let me ask the people at Garfield High School this. You guys rally out there. We want our students safe. Don't bring back the cops. What would you like to do? What would you like to do? Oh, let's hire security guards. You know most of them are off-duty police officers, right? Or retired police officers. They're basically police officers with less restrictions on them. What would you like to do? What's your big idea? Let's give it over to the community. Your community's trying to kill each other. What is your solution for this? Really? You don't want the cops there. You don't want security guards there. What is the solution you propose? Because you had a guy break into a Seattle public school today and attack a security guard and point a gun at a student. You had multiple shootings at Garfield High School last year. You had shootings at multiple other schools. You have people bring guns onto campuses, but you don't want the cops on campus. What is your solution? You can scream and yell all you want. You can chant all you want, but that's not a solution. A solution was presented, and you guys didn't want to take advantage of it. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from our friend Transit Joe. Transit Joe, what's up, man?
What's up? It's good to hear you're doing relatively okay and back in stride. Guys, break some news here that surprisingly the Seattle Times and others don't care about. Apparently, your governor and my governor, Bob Ferguson, got a warning letter from the Public Disclosure Commission a couple days ago because he wanted to use his official X account to misrepresent an initiative about voter roll integrity.
Really? Have you emailed me about this yet? I haven't had a chance to get caught up on all my emails. I will get to it, Joe. I will get to it. I will look it up. I will get to it. Let me check it out first, okay?
All right. I'll let you check it out first. And if I don't hear from you by this time tomorrow, I'll
yeah, do me a favor. Just resend it so it's at the top of my email account, ari@kvi.com, okay?
Yeah, Brett. Yeah, one last thing. I want you to know personally, I keep reaching out to Governor Ferguson's comms person to condemn anti-Semitism. The one time I got her on the phone, she was like, oh, we have statements. I'll send them to you. It's been 2 days. I've been waiting. The statements aren't there.
So I'll ask you this, Joe. You have not always been the biggest supporter of President Trump. Is there something you'd like to say to President Trump today about the historic peace agreements?
Thank you for giving me the time to say this. I want to thank President Trump and his wonderful team for as well as the Israeli Air Force, for forcing the hand of Qatar to tell Hamas to release the hostages. If they don't, it's time to eliminate Gaza from the face of the earth. That's how far right-wing I'm on this issue. I want to thank President Trump for forcing an end to this horrible tragedy that's over 2 years old and has caused so much hatred and so much division in our world. We desperately need real leadership to to bring world peace, and talking about world peace is not the same as bringing it about. So,
Joe, I'm going to give you a little present because I know you and I haven't always agreed on the president. I'm going to give you a little present. That's right, Joe. Welcome to the winning team. I know you've always been a strong supporter of defending Jews and standing against anti-Semitism, but can you imagine at the beginning of my show you ever saying anything nice about President Trump at all?
No, I never thought President Trump was just competent, but he's incredibly competent.
I got to say, Joe, it's such an amazing day. I think that was a little cherry for me on top of all the other good news. Appreciate the call. Appreciate the kind words. Yep. Appreciate you being part of the show and appreciate you being a watchdog for all of us. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, Brandy Cruz got to go to the White House yesterday to talk to President Trump. She's going to be joining us and filling us in on what the entire experience was like and what is going to be done about Antifa. Tell us about the entire experience when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. There I am, offline for the Jewish holiday for 48 hours. I come back on, what I miss. I'm like Johnny Five in Short Circuit going, need input. And I go on social media, and the first thing I see is a whole bunch of my friends sitting in the White House. And I said, that's amazing. That's incredible. Brandy Cruz, Jonathan Cho, Jack Posobiec, Savannah Hernandez, Katie Daviscourt, all these people I know, Cam Higbee, sitting there talking about Antifa with the President of the United States. Tell us what it was like in the room. Joining us now in the Warrior Injury Law studio line, none other than the host of the Undivided Podcast, the one and only Brandy Cruz. Brandy, tell us all about it.
Hello. Well, I have an hour and a half of sleep, and so that tells you a little bit about my day yesterday in D.C. But, I mean, look, I would love to play it cool and be like, oh, no big deal, the White House. But no, I was totally geeking out. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And also to be there to talk about a subject that matters so much to me. I mean, you know that I've been covering Antifa for 15 years in Seattle, first as a mainstream journalist, radio reporter, TV reporter, and then as an independent, host of the show. And, to try for 15 years to get people to take seriously the threat that Antifa poses to our communities and indeed the crimes they carry out, and then to have the President of the United States recognize the threat, and invite so many of us there who've been in the trenches was really just an honor.
I think in the 4 minutes and 27 seconds you had in that video, which went uber viral, so much so that my phone, I forgot to put the buzzer off for the Jewish holiday. It's buzzing and buzzing and buzzing. I'm thinking, oh my God, what tragedy has happened? What's going on? Turns out it was just people sending me your video. So what happens is, in those 4 minutes and 27 seconds, you not only made your case, but you also destroyed the media, and you had the president agreeing and complimenting you. Tell us what it was like.
Yeah, well, it's, they told us we'd have 3 to 5 minutes each to speak. And, all of us went in there with, individual sort of mission and what we've been, covering. Like Katie Daviscourt talked about what's happening in Portland. She's been down there sort of entrenched in it. And what I wanted to get across is from my perspective, which was pretty unique in the room as a former television journalist who covered Antifa. Because there's this real, lie being spread by the mainstream news that all these are just right-wing agitators. It's only the conservatives getting assaulted, and that's just not true. When my crew was mobbed at CHOP in 2020, I was a mainstream journalist, and I've watched over the years many legacy reporters get assaulted by Antifa, and then it's just like they memory hole it. And so I really wanted to talk about that aspect of it and to make it clear to the press that was in the room, I'm not here to convince you that Antifa is real. I've given up. There's nothing I can say that will convince you. We're here to figure out what we're going to do in the next 3.5 years without your help to take down Antifa. And so, yeah, I had an opportunity to speak directly to the press corps, which many of the independent journalists and content creators in the room also took that opportunity. And I also, I asked a few people, I said, should I tell the president? Because I didn't find out that he was going to be there until a couple hours beforehand. We weren't given the detail that the president was going to be there. And then I found out, I'd asked a few people, should I tell him I used to have TDS, trauma derangement syndrome? And my producer, Nicole, my husband, I think everybody's like, don't do that. That's awkward. That's like going into someone's house and saying, I used to hate you. Don't do it. And I was like, I think I can do it in a way that's fun. Because one of the things that's changed for me about Trump is now I find him genuinely funny. I find him very entertaining, where I used to find him just, soul-suckingly cringeworthy. And so he has a great sense of humor. And so he came in the room and he was laughing and joking with us. And I said, no, I think I can tell him I had TDS. And I'm actually very glad that I did, because it ended up being a fun moment and just a fun exchange with the president.
Massive viral clip as well. That's the thing that everybody's clipping so much. So that was a great, great moment. And I got a question for you. You mentioned that all of you were told you were going to be given 3 to 5 minutes. A lot of you have overlapping. How'd you guys not conflict? Was there any coordination beforehand? Because I know you're friends with Katie. I know you're friends with Cho. I know you're friends with Cam. I know you're friends with Andy. No. Was there any discussion of, okay, I'm going to take this? Because Cho really made it about the homeless industrial complex angle. You made it about the media angle, and even though the other ones took pot shots at the media, yours was a direct indictment of the media.
Yeah, we did talk a little bit, not all of us, but I also think, none of us really had prepared remarks. Maybe a couple people did, and so, we were kind of, like what I ended up saying to the president, I hadn't planned much of it, except I knew I was going to talk about the media, and maybe if I had time, tell him about my TDS. And so I think we all just were passionate about trying to because we knew that going in there and just telling a bunch of stories about all the times we've been assaulted by Antifa wasn't really going to do anything, right? We all know this is happening. The question is, where do we go from here? And so we did have a little conversation about, Andy Ngo, for instance, who's kind of the grandfather of Antifa coverage. He, really wanted to talk about his journey at the very beginning and what, set it off and sort of the international aspect of Antifa. So, yeah, we did talk it out a little bit so we could make sure that we had the most effective use of the president's time as possible.
Did you get any one-on-one time with the president or with Kristi Noem or with Kash Patel? Because you had all of them and Pam Bondi in the room. Did they ask for any follow-up? Did they ask for your videos? Had they seen them already? Was there any prep in advance of send us your stuff?
So I'll tell you, this all came together very last minute. I believe it was Monday. Bald eagle landed on the roof of my house and dropped a note down the chimney from the White House and said, "Do you want to come to the White House?" I mean, it wasn't that. It was a text message, but same thing, right? And I was like, oh, gosh, let me check my schedule. Do I want to come to the White House? Of course. And then even then, they only told us it would be a roundtable of independent journalists and members of the administration. So we weren't given until the day of the fact that it would be Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Kristi Noem, and the President of the United States. And so we didn't really have time to do any, dumping of information on them. But they did ask specific follow-ups during, you probably heard about, can I get that name? Can I get that information? Yeah. Can you send that to us? And I do know that some follow-up has already happened in that regard. We didn't have a lot of time with them after, I got a chance quick to shake the president's hand as he was leaving. And but because the other big news, this was, I think, the most, honestly, fascinating part of the whole thing to me, is the news that broke about the potential peace deal in the Middle East in the middle of this thing we were doing. And so they all left pretty quickly because they had to attend to that. But it was fascinating, Ari, and I know it's such a big, that you've been talking about in your show, but, we're sitting in there and the doors are open to the next room and there's a long hallway. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see the Vice President of the United States pacing kind of outside on his phone. And then I see the Secretary of State, neither of whom are scheduled to be at our thing, and they're pacing in the hall. And I'm like, something is going on here. Something's up. And then the president spots Marco Rubio, and you probably heard him, call Marco Rubio in. And Marco's like, and the president's, do we have any updates on the Middle East? And he goes, well, Mr. President, that's what I want to talk to you about. But after all these people leave. And so this is happening in this real time, and he writes a note, he passes it to the president, and that's when the president read that they're very close to a deal, which was just a cool thing to watch happen.
Witnessing history in the room in the last couple of minutes we have with Brandy Cruz, host of the Undivided podcast, which you should sign up for. You should go watch it and hear her episode, especially today, where I'm sure she gives you a much longer, much more detailed version of this. So, Brandy, something to me, you just brought this up, the contrast between the end of the Israel-Hamas war, we hope, and what you guys were talking about. People say, well, Antifa's just an idea. And I say, why aren't we treating it like Hamas, various terrorist cells? Why aren't we treating it like Al-Qaeda? Was that even part of the discussion? Because we still go after Hamas and Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups through their finances. Is that something that's being discussed or investigated?
So specifically, Kash Patel said they're following the money, and they want to figure out where and I said on my show today, I guarantee that they follow some of the money back to some of these, and I don't know if it's money sent with the intent of criminal conduct occurring, probably not, but money that's propping up some of these radical groups. I guarantee you could follow it back to the teachers' unions and the Democratic Socialists of America. I mean, there's not a coincidence that so many of these Antifa types are public school teachers. It's not a coincidence that so many of these Antifa types belong to the Democratic Socialists of America. So they're following the money. They're trying to figure it out that way. And also, it is true that Antifa, as much as I hate to give the media any sort of credit, but when they say it's difficult to define Antifa, I agree with that. I do think it is. You can't just say you're a terrorist because you're dressed in all black. So it's not about prosecuting ideology or ideas. It's about prosecuting actions. So at the end of the day, if all the federal government does is they look for actions, that are happening, violent political extremism, and they prosecute those actions and then also run a subsequent investigation to see if anyone contributed to that conduct, planned it or funded it, then that's great. That will help with our mission.
Brandy, just before we let you go, what do you think about the local media coverage of this meeting? I saw certain articles were entertaining and I was giggling and yelling at the screen at the same time. What was your impression of the coverage of this event?
Gosh, I haven't read much of it. The only thing I saw was a Como News article that was fine. It basically was about how so many, we were there, Northwest journalists. They even mentioned Jonathan Cho, who they fired. So I thought it was funny they had to put him in, that they fired him and then he's there with the president. And I thought it was mostly, the Como one was mostly fair. There was maybe a line or two where I was like, okay. But I haven't read any others. So if you have some that you'd recommend, I, will read them later. I've been a little busy.
I would actually say the lack of coverage of this speaks so much that Como was one of the only ones I saw about this. The other one was some people tweeting about it, but nothing that was any great shakes. I will say the fact that they didn't cover it only underscored your point of the lack of media coverage. Brandy, in letting you go, I just want to say this. We just got this text in. This is from William. He put this in on the Warrior Injury Law text line. Hey, Ari, tell Brandy that Dory Monson is smiling down on her. You did an amazing job. You made us all so proud. You brought this issue to the forefront that us here in the Pacific Northwest have known for so long. I can't sum it up any better than what William said. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Oh, and thank you, William. That just makes me, I wish Dory was here because he would have just been so excited about the whole thing, and I wish he was here often, but thank you, Ari. I appreciate it. And I wish you would have been there. Gosh, we'll have to go back.
Yes, I agree, for sure. It seems like we can't coordinate our schedules with trips to the White House. Brandy Cruz.
I know.
Yeah, great job. Really incredible job of bringing this to the national forefront. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, always a pleasure. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues, including, is the insanity over with this Nirvana album, Nutso suing the band for not being part of it? Yeah, complete topic change, because this case may finally have an end. We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Total topic switch from all the serious stuff around here today. But this story got my attention, and I know we have a ban on Nirvana because I'm a loser and I don't like Nirvana, but this story's too insane, and we've discussed it a few times already. A federal judge earlier this week dismissed with prejudice Spencer Eldon's lawsuit over Nirvana's Nevermind album. He's the naked baby. And he's been suing the band for years for royalties. I'm sorry, dude, that they didn't let you in the band. I'm sorry. But you get the best pickup line of all time. And I apologize to some people who may see this as crass. And it might be bordering on sexual harassment. But I'm actually stealing this from Rolling Stone magazine, so that's why it's a little crass. But he gets to go up people and say, I bet you've seen me naked before. That's... Okay, terrible thing to say to anybody. Definitely sexual harassment. But still, you get to say, I was the naked baby. That wasn't enough for you? Now, if people, for whatever reason, Google who was the naked baby, they're going to get all the lawsuits. And you are forever marked as a sore, not loser, but just spoiled sport. That's really what it is. And it's really disappointing. You had the ultimate thing where it's just, hey, I get to be part of music history. I get to be part of music history. Your parents did it. You want to be mad at somebody? Blame your parents for selling your image for only $400 and throwing you in a pool. I can understand you being mad at your parents. Taking it out on the band? U.S. District Judge Fernando M. Olguin closed the case, which was initially filed in 2021, accusing the Seattle rock band Nirvana, various labels, and other individuals of violating federal child pornography laws, according to Cairo 7. In the single-page judgment, Eldon's claims have been dismissed. He is barred from refiling the suit in federal court. The complaint from Eldon alleged that Nirvana and their team knowingly produced and commercially exploited a nude photograph of Eldon as a 4-month-old child when he was used for its cover in the 1991 album Nevermind. Why'd I put this in the Woke Report today? The entitlement it takes to sue for this, where you just say, as opposed to I'm a piece of music history, you get this instead. You want to know how outrageous this would be, Mike? Here we go. Ready for this one? I sue the Trump administration because I didn't get invited to the White House with Brandy Cruz and Jonathan Cho. That's how crazy this is, right? That's how nutso this would be.
Why is Ari all alone?
No
holidays.
Yeah, exactly. Holidays all the time. The synagogue security guard comes up to me as I'm walking to synagogue, and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, well, I'm going to synagogue. You know, that's what we do on the holidays. And he says, no, you're supposed to be in D.C. I go, what do you mean I'm supposed to be in D.C.? He goes, all your friends are in D.C. Everybody we provide security for is in D.C. It's a pretty easy week for us. What are you talking about, man? Yeah, Cho and Brandy and Cam and Katie, they're all chilling at the White House today. Don't get me wrong, I love synagogue and I love all the food I had, but White House sounds kind of fun. It's all good. God means for things to happen. And I'll say, when we just spoke to Brandy, when we were just talking about her, I was overcome by the emotion that I had when I went to the White House for the first time. When I had Donald Trump on the phone, President Trump on the phone for the first time. These really are amazing, amazing experiences. I'm so happy for my friends, but more than that, we now have the eyes of the nation on Seattle. Yeah, it's a negative story, but it's in a positive light. Here are the journalists doing their jobs. Here are the journalists shining a spotlight on what's going on here and now bringing in the feds to actually deal with it because things have gotten so out of hand. We've got Bruce Harrell going viral for all the wrong reasons. On the other hand, you've got Brandy and Cho and Cam and Katie going viral for all the right reasons. Journalism done right. Investigative reporting done right. And showing how you can use social media to show the problem, show the failure of Democrats so that you can come in and fix these things. And I finally have hope that it might actually be solved.
Well, and now, again, with that conversation we had with Brandy in this summit at the White House, look at how much independent journalists are eating the mainstream media's lunch. They literally, our friends, independent journalists, literally have a seat at the table.
Exactly right, Mike. Exactly. And you know what? Seattle Times, could have been you. But no. You want to pretend it's not happening. You want to pretend it's a street fair. It's a block party. Oregonian, could have been you. Any of our TV news outlets, could have been you guys. And instead, you said, this isn't a story. Like so many people we know in the mainstream media. Nightly riots, not a story. Taking over 6 blocks of a city, not a story. Journalists getting assaulted, not a story. Are you kidding me? Congratulations, guys. You played yourselves. That's exactly what just happened.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Meanwhile, we're just talking about, does this mean that the Sonics will be back?
Right, that's what the journalists are
Because the
talking about.
Sonics guy isn't there at that table.
Exactly. Gee, I wonder why that is. Oh, Bruce Harrell pulled a basketball out from behind a podium. Let's cover that. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. For example, is Bob Ferguson playing chess with the ghost of Joe Biden? And there's a new hate crimes hotline. I kid you not. This is all real news and actually happened. We'll give you all the details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, give us a call or a text on the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour is Bob Ferguson playing chess with a ghost of Joe Biden. I kid you not. This is a real question I have. But before we get to any of that, we go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Paul in Bonnie Lake. Paul, what's going on, man?
Thank you, Ari, for taking my call. Two things. The promise of Genesis 12:3 is still in effect and makes good individual and national policy. Well done to President Trump. But number two, just as important, I am a federal employee providing direct medical care to military personnel. I am not being paid, and the military is scheduled not to be paid on this Wednesday. The Democrat Party hates the military. They have invoked cloture in order to get 100 votes. They have more concern with illegal aliens, people invading our land. But no one is talking about the military not being paid on military payday this Wednesday.
Here's something else for you. Did you hear Schumer's comments earlier today? Hang on one second, Paul, so I can play him for everybody.
Each day, our case to fix health care and end the shutdown gets better and better, stronger and stronger.
Whoa, 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 whoa. How does that make you feel, Paul?
Terrible. They hate the military. This is the 60s and 70s all over again. I lived through it.
Yeah, exactly. And most people don't even know Schumer said that. The comments may be going viral on social media, but unfortunately, a lot of people haven't heard that. Paul, share it far and wide, and definitely call your representative and say, open the government. In fact, later in the show today, Adam Smith is going to be joining us. Now, Adam Smith is not responsible for the shutdown because he's in the House, and this is a problem with the Senate. But I am definitely asking him about Schumer's comments. Paul, appreciate the call. Sorry for what you're going through. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. I think we need to play that Schumer clip one more time.
Each day, our case to fix health care and end the shutdown gets better and better, stronger and stronger.
So you literally are doing exactly what I said you were doing. You're holding on, hoping your poll numbers go up. Is that what it is? Because actually your case has been getting worse and worse.
I know folks, that are serving and other folks that are affected by the shutdown, like actually having like actual difficulties. I would like to share a moment of Big Mike being petty about something, how it's affecting me. This next weekend, this coming up weekend is my wife's and I's anniversary, and we're heading to Port Angeles to take part in the Dungeness Crab Festival that we're very much looking forward to. However, I just got a notice today from the Dungeness Crab Festival in Port Angeles that says, schedule update. Stop calling me. I thought I had turned the phone off, but I had not. Schedule update. Due to the government shutdown, Army First Corps band performance and U.S. Coast Guard search and rescue demo are canceled.
Boo!
Lame.
Boo!
So, I mean, I know other folks are like actually affected by the government shutdown in meaningful ways, but also now I don't get to hear the First Corps band.
So I'll tell you something, Mike.
Anniversary ruined.
I had a similar situation. Remember Sequester? Remember that when it shut down the Blue Angels from flying and Seafair was really, really lame? Do you remember? That was Obama. Do you remember when Obama shut down the government because he wanted to push through Obamacare? Do you remember that? He shut down the government for 2 weeks because he wanted to push through Obamacare. And actually, during that time, me and my kids, I was taking my kids to Washington, D.C., everything was closed. Had to settle for Philadelphia instead. Not the same, but still, we feel for our military members. In fact, Mike Johnson, not too happy about what Chuck Schumer said. Here's what the Speaker of the House said.
They're desperate. There's a rising mark. About to elect the mayor of New York City. Chuck Schumer's from New York. He sees a rising Marxist challenge to himself. And there's one thing that Chuck Schumer cares about more than anything else, and that is his Senate seat. The guy's been in Congress for 44 years. He doesn't know how to live life outside this building, and so he will do anything to make sure that he keeps that seat. He thinks the AOC is going to challenge him or some other Marxist. I'm just telling you the plain truth, and I take no pleasure in this. I'm trying to muster every ounce of Christian charity that I can. But this is outrageous. He's playing games with the American people. Real people are being hurt. Veterans and troops and everybody, people that rely on these services. God bless America. Do the right thing and open the government.
By the way, I've never heard Mike Johnson talk like that before. Having sort of met him at the RNC when he went running by, he didn't run by. Mike Johnson is a very deliberate, meticulous robot man. Robot man. He doesn't really have a lot of emotion. He gets that smile, sometimes a little chuckle. He's a robot man.
He walks with purpose.
Yeah, with purpose, right. A determined feller. That's what it is. As he breezed by the KVI booth, even as he was taking pictures, very stiff. Very, very stiff. There's a picture of him in front of the KVI booth. We're like, can we get an interview? And we're trying to get through his phalanx of people and his entourage and everything. And they're like, sorry, he doesn't have time for you people today. No, it's fine. It's fine. We had plenty of other great guests during our RNC coverage. But a very purposeful man. I don't think I've ever heard him have emotion before. And trust me, he's not that good of an actor. That is legit. That is genuine what you're hearing from him. And he's 100% right. Chuck Schumer is worried about his Senate seat. He knows if he caves, AOC is coming for him because all she will do is run on the following. Every single email will be, Chuck Schumer isn't progressive enough. He caved to Donald Trump. He is a Donald Trump MAGA supporting henchman. We need real progressives in the Senate. Vote AOC. Donate to Act Blue. Guaranteed. Guaranteed that's what's going on. Speaking of Democrats who are in government for far, far too long, there is one of the weirdest pictures I have ever seen over on Turd Ferguson's social media account. Now, here's the first thing. Exactly. Here's the first thing that's fascinating. It's not on the governor's account. It's on his personal account. That's weird thing number one. Weird thing number two is it's Turd Ferguson playing chess with Joe Biden. And the Joe Biden that is in this picture looks like he's a ghost or a hologram. The lighting is all off where it looks like Joe Biden isn't even there. Now, my guess is you can see through other windows in the room. It's a very bright day, and probably a bright light is hitting Joe Biden at just the wrong angle. Then take it again, guys. You're there for the photo op. If you're doing this for the photo op, then get the picture right. But a lot of people online are looking at this thing and saying, it looks photoshopped. I'm going to tell you a bunch of problems with this. Number one, does anybody think that Joe Biden is a strategic thinker? Exactly. Now, mind you, I'm a strategic thinker, but I suck at chess because I don't have the patience. I just want to get the game done. I'm a checkers guy. I just want to get the game done. It's not because of a lack of thinking. It's because I don't have the patience for it. Blame the ADD TV generation for that one. Yes, the quasi close to Gen X times that I am, even though I'm not. That's what I blame on that. You think Joe Biden is playing chess with anybody? No. No way. See, Baby Yoda knows. Here's something else. The board moves, I know enough about chess to just look at this thing and go, those moves don't make sense. Did you randomly make it look like somebody set up the board? Now, I want to say it's photoshopped, but I don't think it actually is. It's just a creepy thing, but I got a better question for you. What's Bob Ferguson doing meeting with Joe Biden? That's the question that matters. See, I've been saying for so long that Bob Ferguson just wants to be Attorney General, just wants to be President of the United States. Why are you going when you're not governor right now of Washington because you went on vacation? We've been asking where he is. And, you know, I had a half moment of doubt last week. I had a half moment of doubt because I give the benefit of the doubt when I really shouldn't. I said, is this like the Ron DeSantis situation where Bob Ferguson could have a horrible disease or something and we only find out later and we all feel like jerks for going, where's Bob Ferguson? Like with DeSantis' wife. Remember when the whole media, where's DeSantis? Where's DeSantis? Well, he was with his wife at cancer treatment, and he was gone for a day. Bob Ferguson's gone for 2 weeks, and he's playing chess with Joe Biden. Now, here's what he wrote. I've played a lot of chess in my day, but never against the president. Well, you're not playing one against the president now. Thank you. Great to see Joe Biden and hear his thoughts about navigating challenging times. Joe Biden's thoughts. Wait a second. Hang on. Joe Biden's thoughts? Does Joe Biden have any thoughts? You need a montage. Even Rocky had a montage.
Watch me.
If you think I don't have the energy level or the mental acuity. The best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway, from Charlotte, another line going from in Florida down to Tampa. Of Putin's kleptocracy, yeah. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him. The idea that Los Angeles and what am I doing here? For two reasons. One, we haven't been able to communicate it in a way that is, let me say another way. But the nature, not a solid meeting with they make a very good point. Here's the deal. Here's what drives the driver in the states that are affected. Here's what you can do, the drivers.
Yeah, nobody's playing chess with Joe Biden. He's not Jed Bartlett for the West Wing fans out there, okay? That's not what this is. Ferguson writes, we discussed a few good moves on and off the board. Really? What good moves would those be? Can anybody name one thing? Just one thing that Joe Biden accomplished in his 40-plus years in office. Anybody? Can anybody at all? Give us a call, 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757, or text us. If you can think of one thing Joe Biden that did that helped the country. Yeah, I can't think of anything at all. Not.
How about no?
Say Dr. Evil knows the score. He knows. He's looking at two people to hang out in the Evil Medical School with him. Exactly. Crazy stuff. Meanwhile, we know that Turd Ferguson has his hate crimes reporting hotline. You know this thing is just to report conservatives, but it has a second purpose of if people report a whole bunch of hate crimes, then they're going to use the data and say, see, we need to combat hate crimes. So we need to combat hate crimes, so you got to give us more money. We got to tax you more to stop all the hate crimes out there. Now, given the information we got from the ADL last week, for those of you who may not have been listening, the ADL has a heat map, they call it, showing all the hate crimes across the country. Is this based on the FBI database? No. Is this based on local police reports? No. What's it based on? People who report things to the ADL. Now, the ADL has a categorization system where it classifies these hate crimes, and I'm using air quotes for those of you who are watching on the live stream. So it has Islamist, it has left-wing, it has right-wing. Tons of right-wing stuff on there, but anything which is left-wing violence, the categorization is left blank. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entries. And what's even more fascinating to me is even when the group says they're left-wing and the description of the incident says they're left-wing, they won't label it left-wing. So what do you think they're going to do with the hate crimes hotline data? By the way, Mike, I did file that public disclosure request. Haven't gotten anything back yet. And I filed it for the first month. That's July through August. That's it. From the day it went live. So what was that, July 5th, 6th, something like that, to August 5th, 6th? Still haven't gotten the data back. It should be real easy. Here's the spreadsheet. There you go, Ari Hoffman. What's the delay on it, do you think? Well, if this one's so successful, why do you need one for King County? Why does King County need its own hate crimes hotline? I got an email this morning from the King County executive, and it says, King County announced today the launch of the Stop Hate Hotline. The hotline is operated by the nonprofit Crisis Connections. It is now live and can be used to provide an immediate, confidential reporting system for victims of hate crimes and bias incidents while connecting them to vital community resources and community support. Where's the phone number? Hang on. I'm scrolling here. I'm scrolling through all this, through this entire press release. There is not a single... Oh, here it is. You have to click the link to get to it. You have to... Oh, how clever. 833-STOP-HATE-1. You see it? 833 stop H81. And I think we should talk about all the things Dow Constantine did against journalists. That's bias. I think we should report Dow Constantine for everything he did. But if the statewide one works so well, why do you need King County one? And also, when we filed something through the hate crimes hotline for Washington State, you know what we got? Contact the ADL. That's literally what we got. It's not going to send you services. If you want actual help, call 911. In fact, Mike, we have to do that shtick again. Tomorrow, we're going to call their hate crimes hotline. We're going to get a recording of their hate crimes hotline, and we're going to find out what it actually says on this nonsense and how many steps you have to get to this thing. Now, I don't see an actual form to fill out. I just see the phone number. So unlike the other one, which had an online version of this, you have to actually call this, which means you're paying somebody to answer the phone, or you have a really great answering machine on the other end of this thing. This is nuts. Why are we wasting money at this at all? In 2022, the council unanimously approved legislation drafted and sponsored by Councilmember Reagan Dunn. Whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Our buddy Reagan Dunn? Mike, I need to make a phone call and have somebody on the show. Because this thing is a bad, terrible, horrible idea. And I want to ask him about this. Because this thing, we know what it's going to be used for. This thing is going to be used to target conservatives and fundraise. That's it. So I want to ask Councilmember Dunn why he supported something like this. Because it makes no sense whatsoever while they're doing this. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, a whole bunch of our friends in conservative media here in Washington and independent journalism made the trip to the White House. We're going to have some awesome audio clips for you when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. You guys are funny over on the text line. You guys all agree that the best thing Joe Biden did for the country was dropping out and giving Trump a second term. You guys are funny about that because this term has been absolutely amazing to watch. It is the golden age of America. And yesterday, a bunch of our friends locally from the Pacific Northwest and across the country were at the White House talking about Antifa. The Trump administration organized a roundtable from some of the biggest voices in our coverage of this to discuss what's going on with Antifa in cities, and there was a big focus on the Pacific Northwest. Andy Ngo was there, Katie Davenport was there, Brandy Cruz was there, Jonathan Cho was there, Cam Higbee was there. Mike, what were there, 12 or 13 people invited to that? And you're talking about almost half of them are from the Pacific Northwest? Because that's how bad it is out here. And the entire media out here has been ignoring it or covering for it. And the one who called them out was Brandy Cruz. Give a listen.
I'm living proof that you can recover from TDS. I had strong Trump derangement syndrome for probably 8 years. This is one of the reasons I recovered from it. And by the way, it's much better to not have TDS. I'm happier, I'm healthier, more successful. I even think I got a little more attractive after I got rid of my Trump derangement syndrome. Yes. You know, I'm a reporter in Seattle, and frankly, I could not care any less what any of you have to say about this meeting. Could not care any less. We're not here for you. I'm not here to convince any of you that Antifa is a real thing, because if you have not come to that conclusion by now, you are never going to come to that conclusion because you don't want to see it. And you're going to go and you're going to say it's a bunch of right-wing conservative influencers who are here spinning a tale. I was one of you. I was a mainstream reporter in Seattle for 10 years. I was a TV reporter on the streets doing my job, and I was still assaulted by Antifa. So it's not about being conservative. It's about people who go there and show what they're doing. And when I saw, after all those years, that the media wouldn't be honest about what was happening, that Democratic politicians wouldn't be honest about what was happening, I thought, well, gosh, if they're not being honest about that, maybe they're not being honest about President Trump either. And it opened my mind to just looking at things for what they were. And now I find you quite funny, actually. Now it's like I said, I'm much happier.
Now, I'll say something. The entire press corps is there, the entire White House press corps, the biggest names in the country in media. And Brandy's calling them out, deservedly so, because how many of them covered for Antifa all these years? How many of them didn't push back when Joe Biden said Antifa is just an idea? And literally everybody in that room has been assaulted by Antifa. Katie Davenport is sitting at that table with the black eye she got last week after being assaulted by an Antifa lunatic waving a Hamas flag. And you're going to tell us, oh, Antifa's just an idea? Give me a break.
You know, it was funny, Ari. I had the opportunity to watch this roundtable live stream as it was happening, and it's made it into some of the versions of the clips, but not all of them. After Brandy confesses her affliction of TDS, did you see Julio Rosas? He's like, so it's Brandy Cruz, Andy Ngo, Julio Rosas.
Yeah.
So when she's talking about TDS and how she finds Trump funny now, he leans over. He turns into like a Tex Avery Looney Tunes cartoon character. His eyes bug out of his head. He's like, ruh? Looks like Jim Carrey in The Mask. I posted this on my Twitter, @MikeOnKVI. It's like, wake up, babe. New reaction meme just dropped. It's so funny.
I have to go take another look at that. I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
Now I got to go watch it again because that's really, really funny.
Well, as somebody who is incredibly expressive in meetings, I have a new reason to relate with my dude Julio Rosas.
We have to make fun of him about that the next time we have him on the show. Absolutely. We love his book. We love all his coverage, everything. But now I really want to go see that reaction.
That reaction was certainly fiery, but mostly peaceful.
Very good. Very, very good. Our friend Jonathan Cho was there. Now, Jonathan took a different tack than everybody else in the room. He was talking about the ties with the homeless industrial complex. Give a listen.
I cover far-left extremism as well as the homeless drug crisis in America. And I find it oftentimes those worlds intersect. And hot off the presses, what I wanted to bring to your attention today is a report from a Capital Research Center here in D.C. in conjunction with Discovery Institute. They just put out this study right now. And what it shows is that Antifa is heavily embedded in the homeless and housing nonprofit sector. In many cases, the homeless industrial complex is running cover for Antifa. Antifa is benefiting from American tax dollars, and they're essentially being used as the muscle. Let me give you an example. There's a group called Stop the Sweeps in many U.S. cities right now. They get in front of encampment sweeps. What they're doing quietly is they're bringing in Antifa militants to manufacture a crisis to make the police look bad. Another group right now that is behind Antifa and working with Antifa very closely, based on the research that we have right now that we're going to give to you and your team, are the Democratic Socialists of America, also known as DSA. Again, these far-left progressive groups tend to be aligning themselves with Antifa. So finally, in closing, what I wanted to thank you again, Mr. President, is that a few months ago, earlier this year, you put out an executive order on homelessness and the drug addiction crisis in America, and that's sent the entire homeless industrial complex on the run. You have absolutely moved the needle and changed the game. But what's also come out, again, is that there is a connection, a deeply embedded connection with the homeless housing nonprofit game in America, connected to Antifa and the far-left activists. And finally, I just wanted to say that all of our resources at Turning Point USA and Discovery Institute are at your disposal, and we will continue, again, to carry on the legacy of Charlie Kirk. He would have wanted us to pursue and chase the story.
I got to say, that was a great, great comment Joe had, because you only get 5 minutes to talk. As Brandy told us earlier in the show, you only had a few minutes to talk, each of them, during this roundtable, and then they were interrupted by the peace deal. You only get a few minutes. And he managed to highlight the thing that is the reason Antifa's been attacking him, because he's exposing the waste in the homeless industrial complex. Shouldn't we want these people to get housing? Shouldn't we want these people to get treatment? Shouldn't we want these people to get services? Antifa is stopping that, and assaulting people in the process of stopping it. One point that didn't get made during this whole thing was how similar Antifa is to Hamas. They're both terrorist organizations. You can go after Hamas's funding. Antifa did fundraisers in 2020. Antifa has websites. Follow the money. Follow the social media pages. You can find what's on the other end. Now, I think none of this would have happened without Katie Daviscourt from the Post-Millennial. Katie has been down in Portland for the last few months covering what's been going on down there. Her coverage has been so excellent that even though all these great journalists have been highlighting this for years, she is showing how these attacks on a federal facility are night after night after night after night after night. She's sitting at the table, as we were joking but shouldn't have been joking, with a black eye because she got assaulted last week. And there she is in the White House today. Give a listen to what Katie said.
Hi, Mr. President. It is an honor being here today, and I first wanted to start by thanking you guys for designating Antifa a terrorist group. It's exactly what this group is. It's a long time coming. I'm an investigative journalist from Seattle. I work for the Post-Millennial alongside Andy No and Jack Posobiec. I have been infiltrating Antifa cells in Seattle and Portland for the past decade. I know their inner workings, and Antifa uses extreme political violence to crush the civil rights of their political enemies and believes that violence is justified by any means necessary. But today, I want to focus on what is happening in Portland at the ICE facility. I've been covering this for the past 4 months, and this is a call out to corporate media who has completely ignored this story or has falsely reported on it. This is nothing short other than a sustained attack on the United States, which is being supported by Democratic elected officials. The Portland Police Bureau has completely abandoned several blocks outside the ICE facility, giving away their jurisdiction to a terrorist group who has spent the past 4 months harassing, assaulting, and intimidating anyone they perceive to be against their cause.
Katie's 100% right. And you know what's crazy to me? What's absolutely crazy to me? The Oregonian and the Seattle Times come out with their lame reporting on what's going on at that facility, trying their best to cover for it. KATU sets up a live stream, what, yesterday? Oh, now we're going to have a live stream so you can see for yourself. Where were you the last 4 months? The last 4 months. When these terrorists, and yes, they are terrorists, were attacking a federal facility, were attacking federal officers. Where were you the last 4 months? And all these Democrats. Oh, the military's not getting paid. Our federal workers aren't getting paid. Spare me. You know why it means nothing coming from you? Because you've never had their back. You fired federal workers for not getting the jab. You let federal workers get assaulted because you didn't like that they wear badges. You guys allowed this, Democrats. This was an indictment of the Democrat Party as much as it was an indictment of the media because Antifa is the foot soldiers for the Democrats. They look the other way when they're rioting for a cause they believe in. Whether it's George Floyd, whether it's BLM, whether it's Trans-Tifa, whatever it is, they look the other way and they support them, and they even, like Kamala Harris, go and fundraise to get these lunatics out of jail. This whole meeting was an indictment of how bad our media is and how bad the Democrat Party has become. When we come back, Jonathan Cho from the Discovery Institute will be joining us to discuss what it was like for him being there talking to President Trump and what conversations he had behind the scenes. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. So yesterday I'm walking to synagogue, and the synagogue security guard comes up to me and says, "Why aren't you in D.C.?" And I said, "Should I be in D.C.?" And he says, "Well, all your friends are in D.C." I had no idea what was going on because I was off the grid for so long. And it turns out a lot of people I know, a lot of people you know, were invited to the White House to talk to President Trump about Antifa. One of them, of course, is independent journalist, senior fellow for the Discovery Institute with Frontlines from Turning Point USA, Jonathan Cho, and he joins us now on the Warrior Injury Law studio line. Jonathan, how was the White House?
It was a surreal experience, but at the same time, I got to meet President Trump, and the guy was really accessible. It was a pleasant surprise. I thought it would be way more formal, but it was actually a pretty casual setting, and that's what made it easy to share about what we were there for, and that's Antifa.
I got to say, it was fascinating to watch each of you say what you said, and what you said really stood out to me. So you're sitting in this U-shaped table, and each of you was going over a different aspect of Antifa, and I think you're the only one who brought in the homeless industrial complex. Was that something you all talked about beforehand, where you said, I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to talk about that, or you all just came in with your different parts of experience?
Yeah, and let me be very clear. This isn't like some pre-planned, 1 month in the making, roundtable of journalists that were invited. This happened within like 2 days. I get a call from the White House press team saying, hey, can you fly to, Washington, D.C., by Wednesday? And I got the call, late Monday. And, when the president calls, you go. And I said, what are we talking about? It's like, we want to talk about your Antifa coverage. And other journalists from across the country would be there. And, of course, the Pacific Northwest had the most representation. We had Andy Ngo of Post Millennial, your colleague. We had Katie Davis-Court, again, of Post Millennial, your colleague. Brandy Cruz, a podcaster, and I was there as well representing. And to answer your questions, yeah, I think initially we were all sort of concerned that we'd be just saying the same thing, right? Hey, we've all been harassed or attacked by Antifa. Antifa is a scourge on the community. But in fact, everybody had something unique to say. And that's what was really valuable, I think, for the president and his cabinet.
So what you were talking about was how Antifa's involved in the homeless industrial complex, how anytime you're trying to clear encampments, they show up and they keep these people on the streets. You were talking about that aspect of it. And was that news to the White House? Did you get an opportunity to talk to Kash Patel or Kristi Noem or anybody else, even the president, about that afterwards?
Yeah, actually, we did break news on the spot. Discovery Institute, where I'm a senior fellow, where I focus on the homeless drug crisis in America, especially here in Seattle, along with a Capital Research Center based in Washington, D.C. That very day, I've lost track of days now, Ari. What day is this now?
Today is
Wednesday
Thursday.
Yet, or?
Thursday. Wednesday was yesterday. You're at the White House on Wednesday.
Okay.
W for
Got
White
it.
House and Wednesday. There you go.
We broke that story. This research came out on Wednesday morning from Capital Research and Discovery Institute, and in it there are several passages on Antifa's role in aligning with far left causes and initiatives. And what I laid out and what I cited in this research was the fact that in many cases, groups like Stop the Sweeps, and there's a Stop the Sweeps Seattle branch as well here, Antifa uses these nonprofits associated with the homeless industrial complex or housing, and they go in there essentially as muscle, and they create the crisis with cops. And this is the entire, defund the police movement. These are all the anarchists that we've seen here in Seattle. And that's how Antifa has been able to thrive, because people were also asking, who's funding them? Antifa ultimately, the reason why they've been, successful to a certain extent, if you want to even call it that, is they've been decentralized. They've been staying off the grid. But this research clearly shows that there are nonprofits now in America with taxpayer dollars funding this terrorist organization.
We're talking with Jonathan Cho, senior fellow for the Discovery Institute, also a journalist for Frontlines from Turning Point USA, who was at the White House yesterday. Did you get to go to the Oval Office? Did you get a one-on-one time with President Trump, with Kristi Noem, with Kash Patel? Did you get to talk to them, or was it basically, here's the forum, we're going to do it here, and this is where most of the discussion gets had?
Yeah, well, we were all surprised we got that much time with the president. It was nearly 2 hours in this room. But, of course, during our presentation, Marco Rubio walks in and breaks the Gaza peace deal, right?
Yeah.
So that sort of overshadowed what we were there for ultimately. But yeah, at the end, it was really I really appreciated the president again. I think all of us agreed. The president, the White House, acknowledging that Antifa is more than just a mere idea, but again, domestic terrorists as they've now been labeled. And also Kristi Noem and AG Pam Bondi coming up to me, and I personally gave them the research. And they told me to follow up that they're going to use this to, again, root out Antifa and get to the bottom of the organizations that also support these domestic terrorists. I think that was the most rewarding part for me personally.
Really amazing. Last question before I let you go. There are so many people that come down on you all the time. You get attacked by people in the media. You get attacked by people you used to work for. You get attacked by Antifa. You get attacked by lunatics on the street. Was this kind of validating for you? Did it give you a sense of pride that, look at all this stuff, look what I overcame, look what I accomplished going to the White House?
It really did, and I give you credit as well, Ari, because you were the first guy who called me after I got fired from Como. And I didn't know where my career was going to go, but that was also the moment where I decided to double down and focus on far-left extremism, especially Antifa and all the pro-Hamas protests that are also linked to this, the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, that's also linked to, Antifa. And, it's finally paying off. And now it's all eyes of the nation are on this situation and this story. And yesterday's visit essentially just re-energized everyone there in the room.
That's really amazing. Did you happen to notice the reporting from a certain outlet in town on your visit to the White House?
Yeah, I mean, there were several, of course. Some of the far-left outlets were bashing me, but I couldn't help but notice Como News, my former employer, finally, I think that's what you're referring to, right, Ari?
Yes.
Acknowledged me, Katie Davis-Court, and Brandy Cruz as being Seattle, journalists / media figures invited to the White House to talk about this coverage on Antifa. So that was really validating, sort of a full circle moment. But again, I didn't need that to, continue my work. I mean, we're on the same team now, Ari. We just have to keep on going here and representing the Pacific Northwest. And I want to let you know the president is watching everything that comes out of Seattle.
I got to say, Jonathan, I am so happy to know you. I am so proud to know you. And while there's a little bit of envy of seeing all you guys there while I was offline for the holiday, my friends are being successful. My friends are being recognized for their work. And it filled me with such pride to say, this is a guy I have beers with. This is a guy I know. So really, congratulations, because this was such an amazing thing, Jonathan. And it's because of your perseverance and your hard work. You 100% deserve this.
Yeah, thank you, Ari. And again, I want to say that we're all a team, and we're the only voices really out here in the Pacific Northwest, and that's what the president said, and he encouraged us again to keep on going.
Amazing. Go get some sleep, buddy. That's Jonathan Cho, Senior Fellow for the Discovery Institute, reporter for Frontlines USA, powered by Turning Point USA. Appreciate you joining us today, buddy.
Anytime.
We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, if you missed any part of the show, remember to sign up for our podcast. Subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Download the KVI app so you can take us with you anytime, anywhere. So we have a little bit more information on that lunatic who vandalized the Washington State Capitol. They're calling it a mental health crisis, and he's already out of jail. But something else, he's apparently a Democratic operative. Does this surprise anybody at all? A man who recently served as a sergeant-at-arms for the Washington State Democratic Party's convention has been arrested after breaking in the Washington State Capitol building Sunday night, damaging historic artifacts and setting an American flag on fire in what authorities described as a fast-moving and destructive incident. And he's already out of jail. By the way, we don't have the damage total for this yet, but my guess is it's going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars. The suspect, identified as Gunnar Schubert, was taken into custody by the Washington State Patrol after troopers responded to alarm inside the legislative building shortly after 10:15 p.m. Schubert was later booked into Thurston County Jail on multiple felony charges, but they let him go. According to the Washington State Patrol, Schubert parked his vehicle on a flower bed in a flag circle in front of the Capitol. Oh, you mean where Bob Ferguson ran up the LGBTQ flag, and then all the people from the LGBTQIA community got mad because the Washington State Patrol was having a graduation the same day and marched by? There's video of this, by the way. There's black and white video. I've posted it to my ex account, the Hofffather, over on Twitter. It's over there. You can check it out right now. You can see a video of this entire thing, of this guy's whole rampage. Looks pretty deliberate to me. As he moved through the building, he vandalized card readers, hand sanitizing stations, and small equipment before reaching the rotunda and the third floor, where he tips over statues, threw flags to the ground, and burned one. He burned the Washington State flag. He burned the American flag. He tipped over a bust of George Washington. Tell me again how this isn't political violence. He then entered the state reception room, where he started a fire that caused significant damage before troopers apprehended him as he exited the building. The whole episode lasted roughly 10 minutes. Schubert was charged with second-degree burglary, second-degree arson, and first-degree malicious mischief. Following his initial court appearance, Judge Chris Lannis ordered Schubert to undergo an evaluation to determine whether he should be sent to an involuntary mental health treatment facility, but released him on his own recognizance. How does that work exactly? Should it be, we're going to have a psychiatric hold on you? By the way, apparently this guy used to play baseball for Gonzaga and was drafted by the MLB. Didn't get very far, got dropped very, very quickly. This guy was a sergeant at arms for the Washington Democrat Convention. This guy, on his social media, had a video with a card from Shasti Conrad.
Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
Shasti Conrad, head of the Washington State Democrat Party, thanking him for being sergeant at arms. Remember when we first covered this story, Mike, when we saw the press release from Denny Heck? I said, why is he jumping to political violence and condemning political violence so quickly? Because this time it's a Democrat. And what's going to happen? We're all going to pounce, right? They're going to say, Republicans pounce. Yeah, it's a Democrat. Now you say, oh, it's a mental health issue. Now you say, oh, no. We need to evaluate him. We condemn all political violence. It's somebody who's a sergeant at arms for your convention. Let's just remember that. Can't blame it on Republicans this time. So quickly, we have to condemn all political violence. I should reach out to Denny Heck about this. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line. Take a call from our friend Mario in Kent. Mario, what's going on?
Hey, Ari, buddy. Hey, you want to know, buddy, where Antifa gets their funding from? Just follow the money. Follow the money. They always say if you follow the money, it will lead you to the right person. And the other thing is, I guarantee you, who's funding Antifa? The Soros organization and the CCP.
We know already that Soros, the Tide Foundation, has been funding a lot of the pro-Hamas protests. I'm not saying you're wrong. I have to go back and double-check if I ever found a link between them and Antifa. We definitely found it between them and the Hamasniks, but we know that Antifa showed up to support a bunch of the Hamasniks. And Mario, don't you find it interesting that the second they wanted to, they shut down those protests right away and said, nope, now we're doing ICE facilities.
Oh, yeah. That's what they do, because you see, they're hiding behind that little mantra, and they're funding all this thing. And when they're getting close, I hope like Pam Bondi goes after these guys, because you can put an end to it if you identify the source and bring them to justice.
Yeah, I agree.
And the other thing I would tell you too, my friendo, is China involved in the universities. They're heavily pitching their left-wing communist agenda. You know, I was really surprised when they said about 30% to 35% of the young people think that communism is good. And the funny thing is, you know what's funny about all these young buffoons? They wouldn't last a week in a communist country.
No, of course not. Of course not. I mean,
they have to.
I always go back to the May Day protest in downtown Seattle when a guy is kicking out the window of the Nike store with a Nike sneaker on. What are you so mad about, dude? Right? They can't live without their Nikes. But yeah, let's see how long they last in Gaza or Cuba or any of these other countries. Mario, appreciate the call, buddy. Appreciate you being part of the show. Appreciate your wisdom on this. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Lots more to discuss on this busy news day when we come back. How the peace accords are unfolding right now. Will Hamas hold up their end of the deal? And when will we see the hostages returned? We'll give you all the latest details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 5:30 today, Democrat Adam Smith will be joining us to discuss the government shutdown and the peace deal in the Middle East. And speaking of the peace deal in the Middle East, I remember when I was in sixth grade. Sixth grade, they wheeled the TV in, brought us all into the cafeteria to watch the historic signing of the Oslo Accords. And I remember, even as a sixth grader, I said, why do they think this is going to work? Why do they think this is going to work when the Palestinians have broken so many of their previous commitments? Why do you think this one is going to work? Oslo turned out to be a colossal disaster, culminating in the Second Intifada, which saw the death of over 1,000 civilians in Israel. Jews, Christians, Muslims, didn't matter. Palestinian terrorists tried to kill all of them. It was a colossal disaster when you had Yitzhak Rabin shaking hands with Yasser Arafat on the front lawn of the White House with Bill Clinton. And it wasn't because it was a Democrat president. I didn't know what Democrat or Republican was. I had no idea. I wasn't involved in politics. I just said you can't trust the Palestinians. What's fascinating about the peace deal that President Trump has negotiated is it assumes you can't trust the Palestinians. Until they turn over the living hostages, they don't get any of their terrorist buddies back from Israeli jails. Then they have to turn over the dead bodies because they're savages and they hold on to the dead bodies for ransom. And they don't know where all of them are. You remember what happened with the Bibas family? The woman who was kidnapped with her two beautiful little children? And they turned over the wrong bodies when they gave them back? Shows how much they value life. So this deal assumes the Palestinians are going to renege on part of it because they always do. Until Hamas disarms, you don't get a full Israeli withdrawal. And what you're going to see happening, now that the hostages are being released, the narrative is going to change. What's going to happen is the narrative is going to be from the left. Oh, well, they released the hostages. What do you want now? You don't want another October 7th, which is why you have to destroy Hamas. I actually wonder if the blue hair crazies and all the members of the squad are actually praying the peace deal falls through. Otherwise, they think they're going to become irrelevant. You think Pramila Jayapal, you think anybody's going to be listening to her? You think anybody's going to be listening to Rashida Tlaib? You think anybody's going to be listening to Ilhan Omar? They're shockingly quiet today on the eve of a historic peace deal, which I actually have hope for. They haven't said a word because they don't want to give Trump any credit whatsoever. None. The man could cure cancer. The man could cure every virus in the known universe. And they will never give him credit. Ever, ever, ever. I saw Gavin Newsom kind of tried today. He thanked Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Wouldn't even put Trump's name in his mouth. Won't even do it. Won't even do it. They can't even recognize it. And they're the ones who've been saying, ceasefire now, ceasefire now, ceasefire now. Where's the whole ceasefire now crowd? Here's what the president said this morning during a cabinet meeting.
You know, last night we reached a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East, something that people said was never going to be done. We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace. Peace in the Middle East. We secured the release of all of the remaining hostages, and they should be released on Monday or Tuesday. Getting them is a complicated process. I'd rather not tell you what they have to do to get them. There are places you don't want to be, but we are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be a day of joy. I'm going to try and make a trip over. We're going to try and get over there, and we're working on the timing, the exact timing. We're going to go to Egypt, where we'll have a signing, an additional signing. We've already had a signing representing me, but we're going to have an official signing.
This is history. This is history. We hope it all works out for the best. You are living in historic times. You may see a reshaping of the entire Middle East. You may see an expansion of the Abraham Accords, which President Trump didn't get credit for the first time, even though him and Jared Kushner did all the negotiating for that one. He got no credit for that, no Nobel Prize, nothing. We may be on the cusp of a reshaping of the entire Middle East. Israel was the stick. Trump is the carrot. Trump says to Saudi Arabia, he says to Qatar, you want to be friends? Because if not, I'm letting the Israelis do whatever they want. They already bombed Qatar. They took out Iran. They took out Hezbollah. They took out the Houthi rebels. They took out Hamas. We're just going to let them do what they do, and that means more bombings in Doha. That means more bombings in Qatar. We're just going to let them do what they do. And you're reshaping the entire Middle East because it's much better to be friends with the United States and friends with Israel than enemies with both of them. Somebody else who gets a lot of credit for this is Marco Rubio. Here's what he said today.
I don't know if one day perhaps the entire story will be told about the events of yesterday, but suffice it to say, it's not an exaggeration that none of it would have been possible without the President of the United States being involved. It really began with your trip to the Middle East, where these relationships were forged with partners in the region, personal relationships, close relationships that created the foundation where all this was possible, where I think this really took a turn. Remember, a month ago, no one thought this was possible.
Remember a month ago when he was taking all those trips to the Middle East and the left was going bonkers crazy? How dare he hang out with them? He's a plant. He's Israel first. He's Arab first. He's not America first. How dare he? How dare he? And you had the woke right doing the exact same thing. The exact same thing. President Trump is amazing. I mean, really amazing. I don't know anybody else who could have negotiated this deal as effectively because President Trump says, are we going to make a deal or are you going to get bombed off the face of the earth? So what are the subsequent phases of this? Get the hostages back. That's the most important thing. What comes after that?
Looking ahead, what guarantees Hamas disarms and that Israel doesn't resume bombing once the hostages are released?
The first thing we're doing is getting our hostages back, okay? And that's what people wanted more than anything else. They wanted these hostages back that have lived in hell like nobody has ever even dreamt possible. And after that, we'll see. But they've agreed to things, and I think it's going to move along pretty well.
Hamas loses all its leverage for negotiation when the hostages come back. I'm concerned we're not going to get the bodies back. Hamas always reneges on a deal. The question is when they're going to renege on the deal this time. Is it going to be after the live hostages are returned, or all the live hostages are going to be returned? Are they not going to return the bodies? Are they going to say, wait, we're losing all our leverage position? After that, are they going to say, oh, well, we gave back all the hostages. Time to make a peace deal with Hamas? Nope. No. No more October 7th. The two conditions to winning this war were, one, get back all the hostages, and two, Hamas disarms and surrenders. President Trump has given them a way to do it. The question is, will they actually do it? I want to know what you think. Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Let us know if you think Hamas is going to follow through with their end of the deal. President Trump was really excited about this today, And, of course, he called out the Nobel Peace Prize Commission for the fact that he stopped how many wars now? I can't even keep track. How many peace accords has he done? And yet nothing.
I know this, that nobody in history has solved 8 wars in a period of 9 months. And I've stopped 8 wars. So that's never happened before. But they'll have to do what they do. Whatever they do is fine. I know this. I didn't do it for that. I did it because I saved a lot of lives. And that's the thing that bothers me so much about the Russia-Ukraine. 7,000 people are dying a week. Young soldiers. They're almost all soldiers of Ukraine and Russia. So in theory, it doesn't affect us, no, but it's a terrible thing. And we'll get that solved, too. But nobody has ever done 8 wars. Nobody's done 8 wars in 30 years, let alone 9 months.
Do you remember Barack Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize just for being alive? Just for being alive. He was nominated for it before he even won an election. Just for being candidate for president, you get the Nobel Peace Prize. They've given a Nobel Peace Prize to Arafat, a mass murderer. And yet they haven't given one to Trump. You know what? Hot take here. I don't think he should get it. You know why I don't think he should get it? Because then his name is next to all those people. All those bad people who didn't deserve it. All those people who didn't deserve it. I'd rather not see his name next to that. I'd rather say, President Trump, we're going to remember you in history for stopping all these wars, in history for solving all this. Meanwhile, Bob Ferguson, on the wrong side of things as usual. Just a couple days ago, Bob Ferguson posted, I stand with my friend Pramila Jayapal against these dangerous calls for violence In the wake of political violence across our country, this type of death threat is reprehensible and has no place in America. Pramila has spent her life fighting for justice and democracy, deserves our respect. So the woman campaigning for Hamas deserves our respect. The woman who goes out and says she wants to target Republicans, target MAGA, target anybody who disagrees with her, that deserves our respect. You remember what she said just a few months ago when she was doing her resistance training?
We might call this getting strike ready. I think of it as getting us strike ready or street ready. And part of that is understanding our own strength. And as we develop that strength, being able to assess our risk tolerance, because we know that risk tolerance increases as the severity of the situation increases and as our own understanding of what's happening increases. So overall, the more we understand what's effective, what the risks are, and who's ready to participate, the more impact we can have.
All right, let's take a quick look at Pramila Jayapal, strike ready and street ready, who supports the Hamasniks marching in the street. Did she post anything about the peace deal? Let's see. Shut down. Ice, baby. Nothing else. That's what Pramila is talking about because her Hamas buddies are talking about backing the wrong horse. That's Pramila Jayapal. That's Bob Ferguson. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Donna in Spanaway. Donna, what's going on?
Hey, you talk about the hostages. You know why I think they're going to renege on this whole thing? It's kind of like what Dr. Phil used to say, you can't give what you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
I think they don't have the bodies anymore. I think they're all dead. I think that they can't give them. And another part is I don't think they know where they all are.
So that's an important point. They've actually said they can't turn over all the dead remains because they don't know where all of them are. Now, here's a problem with that, Donna. I agree with you. I think they're going to use it as a stalling tactic. I think they know exactly where they are. You really think Hamas doesn't know where the most valuable items they have are? I think they know exactly where they are. I think they're just setting the stage for not giving back the bodies, and they're going to hold on to them for as long as possible.
Yeah, I think they're thinking, oh, boy, we got to do something, but we don't have it anymore. So what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So they're going to find some kind of stall tactic. I agree with you on all this, too. I think it's just another stall, and they don't know where they are, alive or dead. I think they've distributed people all over, and they don't know where they are.
Well, that's why they're waiting till Monday, because they need to get everybody back. Yep. They need to get them all out of the apartments of the mostly peaceful Palestinians they've been stashing them in, like the ones who had connections here in Washington. So that's the crazy thing. And think about this for history, Donna. You know how there are people who helped Jews during the Holocaust? There is not a single Palestinian that has helped a single Israeli or any other member of any other country, for that matter, during this entire time they were hostages. Think about that for a second, huh?
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how kind and how much love we show them. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All they see is hate.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what we do. They will never turn. You can't transform them. It's so inbred in them for generations. That's all they know.
You want a crazier thing? UNRWA, the United Nations agency that deals with the Palestinians, announced today they have enough aid for the next 3 months. Wait a second. Nobody shipped in aid yet. So what you're admitting is that aid that's been sitting there the whole time, you guys have been refusing to distribute. UNRWA is the one that ran the Palestinian schools and taught them this hate. UNRWA is the one that let them use schools and hospitals as military staging facilities and human shields. And yet now they're saying they have aid. No new aid has shown up yet, but magically they have aid for the next 3 months?
I didn't know any of this. I'm going to have to look into it. Interesting. But I got to go. Got to say, Ari, you're awesome. Love your show. You do great work, and thank you for everything.
Thank you, Donna. So kind of you to say that. Really means a lot. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of a show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Over on the text line, Dude in BC says, I'm more worried about the 2,000 prisoners being released. Yeah, Dave's not wrong, by the way. I am just as concerned about that. Why else would they want the terrorists back? We need to stop calling them prisoners. And we need to call them what they actually are, terrorists. And when they say women and children prisoners, these are people who are terrorists. They're not children. They're 16, 17-year-old terrorists who tried to kill Israeli soldiers or tried to kill civilians. Some of you are concerned that this thing, we're not going to see the fruits of it until Trump leaves office. You know what I'm concerned about? Is that you've got a 3-year cycle right here. The Abraham Accords held after Trump left office. You got 3 years to solve that, Because look what happened the second Trump was out of office. There were supposed to be peace deals with Saudi Arabia, and Hamas launched its attack because it knew Saudi Arabia was about to enter the Abraham Accords, and if Saudi Arabia entered the Abraham Accords, that was it for Hamas. No Palestinian state. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. That is what was on the horizon for them, so they launched this attack. You have 3 years to solve this in the Middle East. That's it. The clock is ticking. President Trump can do it. President Trump is amazing. President Trump can do this. Can do this. In fact, I don't know if there's anybody else who could have done something like this. Really, best wishes and such thanks to President Trump, Marco Rubio, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff for pulling this off. Because you guys really did an amazing, incredible job. When we come back, my friends, people who do a terrible job is the Seattle Stranger. Had a little interview with them today and got a crazy story that came out of that, plus more of your calls and texts. But first, we go to Todd Herman's Daily Thoughtcast right now on the Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, if you missed any part of the show, remember to subscribe to our podcast on whatever your preferred podcast platform is and download the KVI app. Also, you can check out KVI.com where you're going to get new, fresh content from me, from Mike, from Phil, from Zach. Lots of great stuff happening over at KVI.com, and you can stream the show over there. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Jake in Seattle. Jake, what's going on?
Ari, thanks for taking my call, man. And this should go without saying, but I feel like I got to say it ahead of time. As a secular American, Hamas does not want to be my friend. And as a peace-loving, freedom-loving American, I don't want to be Hamas's friend. I got no respect for that.
Amen, brother. That's a very kind thing of you to say. What's going on?
So I'm curious, though, man. When I look at the state of the world, even before October 7th, I look at Gaza versus the West Bank, and you see in the West Bank where they're not radical, not nearly as radical. They certainly don't have the militarized presence that Hamas does in Gaza. There's a lot of illegal Israeli settlements. People losing their land.
Hang on. I got to correct you.
Homes.
I got to correct you a little bit there. Okay, that's not accurate. Let's back up a second here, okay? First of all, the reason there aren't any settlements in Gaza, Israeli settlements, and when they say settlements, you're not talking like campgrounds, you're talking full-on housing developments, full-on apartment buildings, is because...
compounds with walls and guards, yeah.
Well, the whole deal, but I'm saying there are also streets, and there's malls and all that. That was all taken out in the Israeli withdrawal in 2005, and it was turned over to the Palestinians in that area. What happened was shortly after that, Hamas comes to power and immediately starts launching rockets and attacks over on Israel. There was no security apparatus in place. So Israel completely withdrew from that area. Now switch over to the West Bank, otherwise known as Judea and Samaria. Just because you don't hear about all the militarization, there is a ton of it going on over there. There are constant
fights. They've got a ton of rocks.
No, sir.
What else?
No, sir. There is actual full-on attacks against Israeli soldiers, and you have the most corrupt body in charge of it, which is...
I'm sorry.
Hang on a second. I'll let you finish in a second,
attacking...
Jake. Jake, I'll let you finish in a second. The Palestinian Authority literally has the pay-for-slay program where they pay people to commit terrorist attacks, including the October 7th terrorists. That's who's running it. So to pretend like it's not as radical over there just ain't true.
Okay, but I guess I'm confused. Is Israel at war with the West Bank?
Well, it seems like the West Bank's at war with Israel, whether or not they're actually declaring war.
Okay, so why are there Israeli soldiers in the West Bank?
Because if there weren't Israeli soldiers in the West Bank, it'd look a lot more like Gaza.
I see. So essentially what you're saying is that the Palestinian people are not capable of governing themselves? I mean, I don't understand.
Yes, absolutely. That is what I am saying, because they have never shown an ability to do so. And when given the choice, they elect the terrorists. They are brainwashed. They are brainwashed from a young age. It's a death cult.
Yeah, how many years ago was Hamas elected?
Hamas was elected back in 2006. That's not your problem. You should be asking, when was the last time... hang on a second. When was the last time Mahmoud Abbas held elections in the West Bank?
Yeah. When was the last time that Hamas was elected in Gaza?
2006.
Okay. And what's the average age of Palestinians in Gaza?
That's a really complicated question. They have entire population, including old people, young people, and everything else. I'm not sure what you're driving at, because to answer the question I asked a second ago, Jake, is that Mahmoud Abbas has not had an election for 19 years. Anytime they call for elections for the Palestinian Authority, he starts a fight with Israel. He has been in office. The last time he had an election, the Backstreet Boys were the most popular band in the world.
Yeah.
And now Hamas, when they have an election, they haven't had an election. They had the one, they took power, that was it, done. You can't blame Israel for that.
Yeah.
These people cannot govern themselves.
Yeah. And we can't really blame the Gaza population either, can we?
Sure you can, because when they're willingly holding hostages in their apartments, when they hold hostages in their apartments, they are complicit. Right now, they are chanting death to the Jews in the streets in celebrations. Can you not blame them for that?
Oh, man, that's awful. All right, that's awful. Do you support Russia bombing, civil service buildings in Ukraine?
Hang on. One topic at a time here, Jake. Jake, we did this one. I'm not sure.
The argument is...
Make your point.
Your argument is that if you put military targets or supposed military targets in civilian infrastructure, it's fair game.
So
I
what
just
you're
wanted to make
you're
sure
trying
that
to
we're
draw a
applying
comparison
that
to that between
consistently across.
Hamas using hospitals and human shields? Is that the comparison you're trying to draw?
Where's the command center for the IDF?
The command center for the IDF? I've been there. Why are you asking? Are you going with that thing you saw online where you think it's under some civilian population? It's under a hospital?
I get my information from the radical left PBS NewsHour.
Yeah, you really shouldn't get it from the Palestinian Broadcasting Company because that is dude, I know where it is. That is a nonsense, crazy thing they said online. Yeah, dude, you got to come up with better stuff than that. I'm happy to have these debates with you, but don't go to them for your information. Were you the one who sent me the emails earlier this week, by the way? I haven't read them yet. I'm going to read them tonight.
Thing I sent you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm literally asking that right now. I will check it out tonight. Back online. I told you it would take a couple days. I'll check it out. Jake, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. So you may not be aware of this. We haven't really spoke about it that much. It's the Family Education Preschool and Promise Levy. It's a new tax or an expansion of an old tax, a renewal of a tax for public schools. And they claim it's going to do more to get kids into preschool and such. Well, once again, King County Elections reached out to me and they said there's nobody representing this on the other side. So would you mind writing the statement for the voter's guide? I said, sure, no problem. Last time the Seattle Times reached out to talk to me about the democracy vouchers when the same thing happened. In this case, though, the Seattle Stranger reached out. Yeah, that's right, the Seattle Stranger. And they wanted to talk about this tax. And they wanted me to go before the Strangers Election Control Board. Now, the woman they had to reach out is one who basically wrote about me for a year straight when I was running for office, and the Stranger Election Control Board are the one that mocked death threats on my family. I was initially skeptical of this whole thing, but I'm willing to let bygones be bygones, and I said, sure, under condition I could record the thing. I get back a yes, no problem, let's schedule it for this day, this is when we're going to do the thing. It was scheduled for today, just before the show. And I'll tell you something that really ticked me off. Right off the bat, they said no recording. And I said, whoa. I said I was going to record this thing. You guys said okay to that. No, we would never agree to that whatsoever. Now, I am going to do an entire write-up on this insanity with the Seattle Stranger because they are not honest brokers. And I said to them right off the bat, I said, you guys are never, ever going to agree with me. You're always going to side for more money, more taxation. You're never, ever going to endorse anything that's common sense that says, let's take a look at the money before it goes anywhere. So, you know what? More on this later, because coming up next, my friends, Democrat Adam Smith is going to be joining us. He's in town while Congress is having its challenges, shall we say, and we got some questions. We'll talk about the peace deal, talk about the shutdown. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. I am so happy when our Democrat friends come on the show because, unfortunately, far too few of them are willing to have the conversations. But a man who is always willing to have the hard conversations with us is Congressman Adam Smith from right here in Washington. Congressman, welcome back to the show. Appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thanks, Ari. I always appreciate the chance, and I've had my battles with the stranger as well, so we can bond over that. I guess is the starting point.
I will say I think they hate both of us equally, but for very, very, very different reasons. So I know,
fair enough.
I know we want to talk about the shutdown, and I'm going to give you all the time you want to talk about the shutdown. But first, I just want to discuss the peace deal for a second because you're the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. I know there's skepticism about this. I have skepticism about this. What are your thoughts about the peace deal?
Well, I think it's a great first step. I mean, I share the skepticism, and we can get into that in a minute. But just, given, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the threat that Israel has been constantly under, the hostages and the suffering of the hostages and of the families, waiting to know what the fate of their loved ones is going to be. I mean, to get past that, at least for the moment, I think we should recognize it as the positive that it is, and be happy about the role that President Trump and the United States played in getting us to this point. So that's number one. Number two, long term, the solution is going to depend on being able to build an alternative to Hamas in the Palestinian territories, in Gaza, and also to some extent in the West Bank. And the Arab states that have been saying for months, over a year now, that they have Palestinians that they can work with, that they're prepared to help rebuild Gaza and bring stability to the area, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Jordan, Egypt, and others, now it's time for them to put up. So the next step's going to be tough, but let's recognize the positive step that has now been taken.
I think you and I are in lockstep on that. I think you and I completely agree on that. And I just got to say thank you for actually saying it because far too few people are actually willing to say that. What do you think is the reluctance on that side? Is it just you can't give the other side a win? Because I know you. We've had you on the show before. When you think President Trump is right, you say so. When you think President Trump is wrong, you say so also. Why the reluctance? I mean, I haven't heard from some of the squad members about this at all. It seems like they're almost rooting for it to fail.
Yeah, no, I think that the reluctance is because we've become such a partisan, divided society. I mean, to try getting a Republican to say anything positive about Joe Biden, I mean, it goes both ways. I think it's because we have focused on our division so much and have become so divided. And I will say, President Trump does contribute to that ever so slightly in a variety of different ways, which we can get into more when we talk about the shutdown. But I try to take the facts as I find them and not alter them based on biases or how I feel about the individuals involved.
Well, I appreciate you being intellectually honest on that regard. We're saying, okay, these guys did some good work. Let's give them credit for that. All right, now let's talk about the shutdown. I know that's why you're in town this week. Let's talk about that a little bit. So regarding the shutdown itself, here's what I'm not understanding, and please help me understand this more. If it's a clean CR to continue funding the government, something Democrats have voted before, something Republicans have voted before, why are we not moving forward with this on just a clean CR basis?
First of all, and I'm going to walk you through a little definitional thing here that I think helps explain it. CR stands for continuing resolution, which raises the question, what is it continuing? It is continuing the existing budget in the existing federal government, which is Trump's. It's Trump's budget. It's Trump's federal government. And he has run it in the most partisan, extreme fashion of any president that I've dealt with. Just looking at the numbers of the budget, $170 billion additional dollars for the Department of Homeland Security. That's an agency that has a $35 billion yearly budget. $150 billion additional dollars for defense. Trillions of dollars in tax cuts. Meanwhile, cuts to Medicaid, cuts to food stamps, the elimination of foreign aid, the elimination of the Department of Education, and then there's all of the hundreds of thousands of firings of federal employees. In certain areas, like the Justice Department and the Department of Defense, those firings have been targeted to people who were not deemed sufficiently loyal to Trump. Trump has used the Justice Department, as we saw again today, in their pursuit of Letitia James. I do wonder if the 3 Trump cabinet members who have committed similar mortgage fraud are going to be prosecuted. I doubt it. So he's done all of that. Now, you can argue, well, look, I'm a Republican. I support those things. I think that's the right way to approach it, and that's great. You can go vote for it. But now, because of the rules of the Senate on appropriations bills, you need 60 votes, which means you need at least 7 Democrats, 8 if Rand Paul continues his stance. Why would a Democrat vote to continue Trump's budget and Trump's continue the way Trump is running the federal government? The reason you have the filibuster in the Senate, presumably, is because then it requires bipartisan negotiation. If you need some Republicans, some Democrats, you got to get together and talk. But the Trump-Mike Johnson approach is, no, this is our budget. You got to eat it. We're not negotiating with you. Unprecedented in government shutdowns, by the way, is what Mike Johnson is doing. Shutting down the House, sending us home, not voting on anything, not having us in session, and saying, look, we're not going to negotiate with Democrats. They have to take this, and that's it. Well, why would a Democrat vote for that?
So I'll put it this way, and I'm going to leave the Letitia James stuff aside for a second, because if we want to talk about political prosecutions and weaponization of the Justice Department, you and I can go back and forth on that all day. But regarding shutting down the government, didn't Barack Obama do something almost exactly the same when he wanted Obamacare in 2013?
Well, what happened in 2013 was the Republicans wanted to end Obamacare. That's what they wanted. And so they decided they were going to vote for it. Now, it's a little bit different in the sense that program had been in place for like 2 years at that point. And you're shutting it down. I mean, I suppose Republicans could say, look, we don't like Medicare, so we're not going to vote for any continuing resolution. I would make the case that what Trump has done in the last 8 or 9 months goes way beyond some one specific disagreement about a health care plan. This is a comprehensive rewriting of the budget in a way that is strictly partisan and strictly reflecting Republican priorities and not Democratic priorities. And also, I left out one of the big issues here. Trump also doesn't seem to think that he has to follow what Congress decides. So if we're voting for a budget, we have to accept the fact that Trump is going to say, okay, thank you. I'm not going to fund that. I'm going to cut money out of that because I don't like it. He said publicly, I'm going to go after Democratic programs. That's what I'm going to do. And he's done it. I mean, he shut down transportation projects in Democratic states. He shut down clean energy programs in Democratic states, which, by the way, is going to drive up the cost of energy and make it more difficult for us to meet our ever-growing energy demands. But that's way beyond the way Barack Obama ran the federal government.
So just regarding the energy programs for a minute here, gas here in Washington State is over $5 a gallon in Seattle right now. We were, for a little while, the highest gas price in the country. That's because some of these quote-unquote clean energy programs, which aren't actually helping clean energy. On Washington State Healthcare Authority, on their website, it literally talks about health coverage for illegal immigrants. We're talking about a whole bunch of boondoggles, a whole bunch of waste that are already making things more expensive for the average Washingtonian. I never hear any discussion about that. I understand these are local problems and not federal problems, but we have a lot of this in the federal budget also. So is there going to be any discussion about cutting anything, or is it just Democrats saying fund everything we want, or we're not going to vote to reopen the government?
Well, no, we're not to that point yet, and maybe I get out more than you do, but I do hear discussions about those two issues. And I think there's legitimate complaints there. But again, the position of the Republicans right now is we are not going to negotiate anything. Here it is. We're going to continue the budget just exactly like it is, and we're not going to negotiate. We're not going to talk about it. I would welcome that discussion. I certainly know we have problems with the way we approach our energy here. I will say on the illegal immigrant issue, the Affordable Care Act very clearly states that illegal immigrants do not qualify for those benefits. So that was a big red herring thrown into the debate on the federal level. What happens on the state level, I'd have to look into it and see. I don't doubt for a second that you're correct about that, but I don't know the ins and outs of it. I do on the federal side.
Just before we let you go, sir, Chuck Schumer today said it was getting better for the Democrats every single day this thing drags on for. I'm paraphrasing there. I could play the clip, but you got limited time, and so do I.
I saw it. I saw it. Yeah.
So what he said today, it just seems like he's doing this for all the wrong reasons for the polling. It doesn't seem like he's actually interested. And then you and I here, so the House already passed the continuing resolution. It's the Senate, as you said, as I'm saying now, that needs to sign off on this thing. Doesn't sound like Chuck Schumer doesn't want to move this at all, doesn't want to negotiate at all.
Chuck Schumer actually, first of all, he said something stupid. Stop the presses. That does in fact happen, and I'll get into that more in a second. But understand the Democrats in the Senate have put forward a continuing resolution, which they have voted for. And that's where negotiations start. So he's not saying nothing. He put something out there, and I know Republicans don't like it, and there's a whole bunch of different reasons not to like it, but it's a starting point. So no, Senate Democrats are not taking the position that we're just doing this for politics and we're not going to put anything out there. They have. Now, what Schumer got caught up in is something that, I do not make this mistake because I take my job very seriously. There's all these political discussions around it on both sides, Republican and Democrat. How is this going to affect the midterms? Are Republicans getting more popular or Democrats? Who's winning the shutdown? And that conversation happens, and that's fine, and it is part of it. But as elected officials, we need to stay laser-like focused on how this impacts our constituents. So to publicly discuss how the politics are playing out, that's not an intelligent thing to do for an elected official. Let other people decide that. So, yeah, I don't agree with saying that. As I laid out to you in the opening, though, there are substantive policy issues that we think are important to the American people that mean that we shouldn't just vote for what the Republicans are telling us we have to vote for. Now, Chuck Schumer shouldn't run around and talk about how this is impacting politics. That'll play out. The elections will happen. We'll make our arguments once the campaigns get started. We should stay focused on issues and stay focused on making our case to the American people about why the issues that we care about, they should care about too. And that's a fight we got to have day in and day out.
I completely agree with that. Congressman Adam Smith, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being willing to have the conversation any single time. When I saw that email from your staffer saying, hey, can you have the congressman on? I felt bad that I hadn't responded to it because I was offline for a couple of days. But I really appreciate you always being available and always willing to come on the show and have the discussion even when we disagree.
Terrific. It's what we got to do. It's where we got to get back to in this country. So thank you for giving me the chance.
Always a pleasure. Congressman Adam Smith, thank you so much for joining us today. Really do appreciate it. Only good news to wrap up the show. When we come back, put a smile on your face as I see the sun setting over the bay. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. It is time to feel good as we wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. And before we get to our good news headlines, some of you had some texts regarding my last interview with Congressman Smith. John in Lakewood says, Adam Smith talks about what federal law prohibits. So why is it okay for Washington State to violate federal immigration law? Yeah, great point, John. If Washington State is bragging about it on their website, so to say it's illegal for illegal aliens to get Medicare, Medicaid, any of the other benefits, yeah, it is. Then why is it happening? Why is it happening? Becky in Enumclaw says, I'm sorry, Ari, I still think Adam Smith was a little full of beans. I'll tell you this, Becky, actually, when I was listening to him, I was enjoying when he was laying out all the things he disagreed with, because I said, I voted for all of this. And what's funny is he even said that. He anticipated I was going to say that. And he said, now some people may have voted for this. Yeah, I voted for most of the stuff he was talking about. John added, also Adam Smith should remember what Barack Hussein Obama said, elections have consequences. The Republicans in charge now. It's their agenda that rules. Yes, but you still have a divided House. And by that I mean you need 60 votes to break the filibuster. You need 60 votes to break the filibuster. And if you don't get those, you got to find a way of making a deal. Because money doesn't just grow on trees, and federal employees have to get paid, especially members of our military. So, question is, how is approval ratings going to track all this? And Chuck Schumer basically gave it away. Chuck Schumer said the dumbest thing he possibly could have said, and Adam Smith agreed with this by saying Chuck Schumer brought the politics into it and took a victory lap, saying, look what I did. Every federal employee is going to say that, and now blame Chuck Schumer. For those of you who ask why I have Congressman Smith on the show all the time, it's because this way we can have these conversations where so many people are not willing to do it. This one here, this is a little Darwin syndrome here, right here. WKRC, a pair of American tourists found themselves lost in translation where their attempts to get plane tickets to Nice, France, landed them in Tunisia. Wait a second. If you have this going on, when they say, hey, the plane's going to Tunisia, why'd you even get on the flight? I don't understand this. They posted a video on September 5th when the airline employee misheard us and said we need a flight to Nice, France, and we landed in Tunisia, Africa. Don't you also see at the boarding gate? A little Darwin award for these people here. Many commentators were quick to point out that Tunis was a city in Tunisia, a country on the continent of Africa. But that was just the beginning of the misunderstanding. Oh, yeah, this goes on for an entire TikTok video. 2 days later, they posted a follow-up video depicting the moment she and her friend realized they were on the wrong flight. Guys, Darwin Awards. Well, my friends, I just want to remind everybody, make sure to follow us on social media. Ari Hoffman Official on Facebook and Instagram, The Hofffather over on Twitter, and make sure to download the KVI app and subscribe to us on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. We'll be back tomorrow with more insane stories, more exciting guests, plus so much more content. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.